Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. Ever since its founding, the actions of the State of Israel have been closely followed and criticized by the international community. The past decades have shown a drastic increase in the interest shown by the nations of the world, most of which has been negative.
This negative attitude towards the State of Israel can be related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to some extent, but much of the criticism is the result of biased media sources and non-governmental institutes who portray a skewed or partial information regarding Israel.
Many world leaders, including Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, openly blame Israel for being the source of the world trouble. Ahmadinejad recently said that the Zionist regime and the Zionists are a cancerous tumor.
Both the Israeli government and Zionist organizations have been working hard to present the international community with a more accurate picture of the situation in Israel.
With us today is Lital Shemesh, a pro-Israeli advocate and journalist. Lital has been part of an effort to present a new perspective to college students within the US. Thank you very much, Lital, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I would also like to welcome my co-host, Sana Slatkov,
Thank you.
and our TV7 analyst, Mati Shoshani.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And let me begin with you, Mati. Could you describe the international image of Israel these days?
I think to answer that, we have to answer who is the international community. If you break them down into three big groups, you can say one is the people who don't really know and don't really have a very strong opinion. Some of them know the facts, some of them don't know the facts. The second is those who have a positive opinion about Israel, the Jewish community, the Christian community, and again, some of them know the facts and many of them don't really know the reality of what happens in Israel. The third part is those who are against Israel. I think it's fair to say many of them know part of the facts, many of them don't know a lot of the facts. So the opinion of Israel is not really related to what really happens in Israel. A lot of people have a idea of what they think happens in Israel, and that's what they go with. So there's no real exact answer to that.
Okay, Lital, so I'd like to ask you, first of all, how did you get into this topic of Israeli advocacy?
Well, first of all, I was always felt very strongly about Israel, and I think that it's only natural for a person who lives in a country to stand for his country. And when I saw that the picture is so not true, that you see the stuff that is happening in the field. I was also serving as a combat soldier when I was in the army, and then you turn on the news and you see that the picture is so distorted, and I had to stand for the truth, basically, and just tell my side of the story.
Lital, would you say that the Israeli attempts to influence the international media have been successful so far?
I think that we are trying to do the best that we can in order to tell the real story from the people who are, citizens in Israel. And I think that we have a lot of hard work in front of us, because the situation at the moment is that there is millions and millions of dollars who are invested by Arab countries and by all kinds of NGOs that are trying to basically destroy the image of Israel and to harm Israel's reputation, my reputation. And I think that we should do the best that we can in order to let the real story out.
Can you tell us a few examples of what you have personally been doing?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm taking part of an organization called Stand With Us, which is a non-profit organization that deals with educating and explaining about Israel. And I was taking part in a tour this year. I was 1 month in the US, a tour that called Israeli Soldier Stories. And I was talking a little bit about my time in the army. I was a combat soldier in the border guard. I was telling about my experiences, about life in Israel, about my work as a journalist, seeing what really happened in Kasled, seeing my parents who lives in Ashdod, and every other day waking up to the sound of the siren. And I was just I was just telling my stories to people who don't really know what's going on in Israel. A lot of people know Israel, but don't really know Israelis. And that was their first time to really get the opportunity to talk to us, to hear the stories, to hear the truth, basically.
I want to ask a question, though, and I think this is important for our audience to hear. I think Israel presents a very an ongoing, very homogenous message, which is, we are not as bad as you think we are, come and please listen to us. The problem is a lot of those efforts are aimed at people who already heard this message, the Jewish community, the Christian community. And by what I've seen, at least in Europe, there's huge, we're talking millions of people who have no idea about Israel, and Israel is investing, all this money and time and efforts into fighting a war, essentially, against the international media. It seems to me, at least, that we're not doing very well. It seems that we're fighting a losing war because the message against us keeps getting stronger every year.
I think that you'll be surprised to hear that the people who were talking to me, I mean, I was on campuses, on schools, and I got all kinds of questions like, do you have McDonald's in Israel? Yeah. All kinds of weird questions that people, just doesn't know what's going on. So most of the people don't really know what's going on. I mean, they saw me, I was talking about my time in the army, and they were like, okay, this is not the Israeli combat soldier I imagine, so a lot of people
course, they have very strong ideas about,
exactly.
the Israelis ride on camels and
exactly.
so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So Lital, what could be done differently to show a more whole picture of Israel?
I think that people, first of all, should understand the way that journalists work. I mean, this time, when a story goes out, the journalists want to get it out as fast as it can, and it want it fast, quick, and very colorful. And that's why the journalists don't really check the facts, check the statistics. The story is out because they're searching for a hot headline, for a sexy headline, and in a lot of ways, Israel is losing in the battle because when the real facts are out, the damage has already been done. And I think that people should seek for the truth. They should talk to Israelis like me. They should search for the real facts, and that's what we are trying to do, basically.
I would go and say that a lot of the journalists are slightly more than just not checking their facts. A lot of the networks are automatically identified with an anti-Israeli message. I think a great example of that is, I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Simon's 60 Minutes. This whole story about, long story to make it very short, it was very anti-Israeli. And our ambassador in the US had to really fight to get our side of the story into the article. So I think there are a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of Israeli journalists have been very successful in just pointing and saying, this guy is he's got his own opinions, this is not factual. And there are the examples of the Mavi Marmara and the CNN cutting out snapshots from that event. It's a lot more. There are people who really lie, and we need to point at them and say, this is not even true. This is a complete lie. At least tell the truth.
And you can also see that in Israel you have much more international journalists than any other conflict zone, around us, because it is so easy to live here, to cover Israel, and you need to deliver stories all the time. And we have tons of international journalists, a lot more than in Syria and Lebanon, because it's so easy, to move freely in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, and you need to deliver the stories, and that's another major problem.
Let me ask you, Lital, how can we present a clear picture to the world when inside Israel, as we speak, there are so many different opinions by so many different people? How does it work?
I think that the fact that we are a democracy and the fact that you have pluralism here is a blessing. It's not a weakness. The fact that we can speak freely, the fact that we have different opinions is a good thing. And you can see with me and my friends, I mean, we have different opinion, we have clashing all the time, arguments, but the main thing, I mean, the thing that is similar to all of us is the fact that Israel has the right to exist. And the democracy and the pluralism is a good thing in my eyes.
I'd go and say even more than that. I'd say that the fact that we're such a diverse society is one of our biggest strengths. And the world doesn't, you were mentioning the people in America or in other countries, they're not familiar with our life. People think of Israelis as, what they see on CNN is a village with soldiers running through it. And the reality is so much more complex. We have the Jews, the Arabs, secular, religious, everyone is in this one melting pot, and we all live pretty much in peace. And there's no other example of this in the world. And at the same time, everyone, still has this notion of, it's just the evil Israelis and the poor Palestinians, where the story is so much more interesting. And if we can, such as just like you mentioned, bring up these stories and say, look, life is so much more complex. I'm a soldier, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, and I was in the army, but I'm still, I still have diverse opinions. It really changes the way people perceive Israel in the world when they understand it's not black and white. It's really
exactly.
But we're trying to speak about the message that Israel is trying to get to the world. And with this whole diversity you mentioned of people, of different people in Israel, so many different opinions, how can we have, who decides what's the right message?
I think that the right message, in my eyes, and I used to say it all the time when I was abroad, I'm not here, I'm not there to stand for Israel. I'm here to stand for the truth. And that's the major thing that people should stick for when they are reading the news, when they are reading what's happening in Israel. Just stick for the truth. I was giving a presentation in UCLA, and this one Palestinian student stood up and he started yelling, you ruined my house in Gaza, what you did in Kaslan was awful, and he just yelled and yelled and yelled. And I waited for 5-7 minutes, and I asked him, can I ask you a question? I'm standing here. I was serving in the army. I lost friends in the army. I have friends who was injured in suicide bomb attacks. My parents lived in Ashdod, waking up every other day to the sound of the siren. And I'm still standing here and telling that I want peace. What about you? Do you want peace? And he just couldn't answer me. And that's the message I want to get through. I mean, we want peace. I want to live in a peaceful country. Israel's from the very beginning, and we're still fighting our war of independence. And we just, want to live in a peaceful country, in a peaceful place.
I think, Lital, that's beautiful. That story is really, it's touching. And I think it would be beautiful if the Israeli government would be able to pick up on such an emotional perspective towards life. I feel if we're talking about the message is so, reoccurring. Israel is a democracy and we're not as evil as they say. Why can't we have a more complex message, like you're saying, and say, let us show them how our country really looks. And our country is really full of people who really want peace. We've been trying, and Israeli public wants, we're democratic. We accept people who hate us within our society, and still we want to have an agreement. We just, we're not talking about the conflict, but it's really Israel's image, and we just have to bring out a more complex image and break the mold of, we're not a democracy, they're all lying. That's not true. There are people who don't know, and there are people who know a bit, and they need to hear, and I love that, the truth. The truth is really powerful, and a lot of people really have a very partial picture of reality. I think if anyone can take anything, it's really to say you need to cross-reference. You're a journalist, you know this. You never write about just one reference. You have to take several different sources of information, and that's what I think people are lacking. They read one newspaper and watch one channel and hear just one message every day, every night. It's always the same thing, and they need to cross-reference, look for something that's different, and then create their own truth, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
We would like to ask you, what's your opinion? Does this image of Israel, is one of the reasons, can it be anti-Semitism? Or is it something that's already forgotten in the world?
I think that in a lot of cases you can see the links between, the anti-Israel and anti-Semitism. As we can see in the Toulouse case in France. So yes, you can see it in a lot of the cases, and I think that the situation is not getting easier. Every other day, you can see a lot more security around Jewish schools in Europe, Jewish public places, synagogues. The situation is not as good as it was in the past, and I can tell you, for me, when I go to Europe, I'm trying not to say that I'm from Israel. I'm trying not to wear my Star of David necklace, because it's still a problem in Europe these days.
Did you have a feeling that you can go outside of one of the places you were in after you said all these words you said, and some angry people might be waiting for you outside?
We had several places in the U.S. when we used to walk around with guards because they had anti-Israel demonstrations. So in some of the places it was unsafe. Mm-hmm. And you can hear them shouting, Viva Hamas, Viva Hezbollah, which is, not such nice words to shout.
From your experience, would you say that the image of Israel in the world is affected by the political situation in the Middle East? Whenever there is clashes, the image is worse than it used to be?
I think that you can shed some light on that one.
Definitely. First, let's ask what politics is, just so our audience at home knows. Politics is money and power, essentially. Values are a small part of those things. But something interesting to think of, no one talks about Israel when there's a clash in Syria, but the Syrians still talk about Israel when there's a clash in Syria. And Assad says, this was the beginning of the riots, Israel sent in insurgents. They're the ones who started the riots. Same thing happens in Egypt and Iran. It's always the Zionist enemy who's the cause of trouble. But internationally speaking, because we're talking about advocacy, let's take Europe for an example. You have there are the financial interests that the countries have. Oil, for instance, financial ties with different Arab countries. And that prohibits them from saying, Israel is actually okay, or we're not sure this is the truth, just because of their financial ties. Russia is no different. It's exactly that case. The money shuts the mouth of people who know the truth. The second one is the question of power. The Arab countries wield a huge amount of power in the international community, and that really they're able to, grab them by the horns and really threaten the international community. And that's another part of it. And the third part is, I think, the internal speech and dynamics within the countries. And I think Scandinavia is a great example of that. And when they have a huge immigrant society, France, Scandinavia, when they're afraid of speaking against a society or saying anything like Islam preaches for violence, or these people are evil, or so on and so forth, because they're afraid of their own immigrant societies. And what led to that is a whole entirely different question. It's humanism and the Western mindset. But in reality, a lot of countries are unable to speak freely. And even if there's a man in power, the prime minister, the president, who says, I'd like to say something, his advisor will say, you can't. We're going to lose this deal. That's worth 4 billion euros. We can't say that. You can't speak against them. They won't visit us next month. There are all these international dynamics that come into to play. And Israel is in a minority. Not only Israel, also America is a minority in the whole story. The democracies of the world are a minority, and people don't realize, I think, how much that comes into play, how much international powers, non-democratic powers actually play with those dynamics. So yes, Israel is very much influenced by that, and it's not even because people hate us in many cases. It's just because we're here, and people point at us and saying other people can't stand up or are afraid to stand up and say that's not true, that's a lie. It's a very complex picture when you look at it from the wider perspective.
I would like to ask you, Lital, what are the greatest challenges that you have encountered in your advocacy work for Israel?
Well, as I said, first of all, I'm not speaking for the people who are anti-Israel. I'm mostly speaking for the people who just don't know anything about Israel, because I think and I believe that ignorance is these days our biggest problem. As I said before, people were asking me all kinds of questions like, why won't you just move to another country? People don't really know a lot of what's going on in here, history, our heritage. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges, because I really want to get my story out. I really want people to hear what I'm going through in Israel. And a lot of the times, even us who lives in Israel keep forgetting, the situation. You can live in Tel Aviv and don't really care about what's going on in the south, and don't really care about the fact that 1 million people are living there under a constant threat, under the rockets that are coming from Gaza. And a lot of the times, even the people in Israel don't really know. We're so used to this everyday life. We go into the mall, people, there's a guard standing in every public place, checking our bag, checking us. And when I go to the US or to Europe, suddenly it's so weird for me to, not being checked in the entrance to the mall. And this is like our everyday life. And it's so important to let people know the way that we live here. For us, it looks so regular. And I was given a presentation in a Catholic school in LA, and this girl came up to me after the lecture, and she asked me, after all you told me about the army, you've been 3 years in the army, and you have the war with Iraq, and you have rockets on the south, and how come you're so normal? And I was standing there and thinking to myself, yeah, how come we're so normal? I mean, this is our everyday life, but it's a crazy life here. So that's the main message that I want to get through.
Do you have some interesting projects going on at the moment?
First of all, as I said, I'm very active in Stand With Us organization, and all the time they have really, really special programs. At the moment, they they brought here 10 users of Instagram. Have you heard of Instagram? It's an iPhone app for sharing photos. So they brought here 10 Instagram users with millions of followers in order for them to show Israel, you know, from the food to the people, from the landscape. So they're shooting and uploading to Instagram, and there is a lot of programs that going on constantly all the time.
Assuming you had an endless budget, endless time to advocate Israel, what would you do?
I think I would do the same things that I'm doing right now, just you know, a lot more. If I could go, you know, and give my presentations every week, I would do that. I mean, it's a matter of budget, of course, but I think we're trying to do our best.
Mati, maybe I can present the same question to you. Maybe the state of Israel, assuming it had an endless budget, what can the state of Israel as a state do in this field?
First of all, it would solve so many political problems if we had an endless budget and create a very lazy nation. But secondly, I think there's, what Lital has been talking about is really that there are so many people who are ignorant about the facts. And I've been shocked, and I'm sure Lital is the same. You go to a university where people are supposed to be educated. Instead of being educated, they know less than most people do about a certain topic. They'll just have such a strong opinion. And a lot of that comes from money. I don't know if people know this, but in the West, a lot of the influence on schools, universities, colleges, and even at lower ages is influenced by money. What do I mean by money? I mean in an Arab country or a body with a very strong agenda will give a donation, $5 million to build a building. And they will set the agenda on a certain topic in that school. America is very famous for that. It happens in all the Ivy League colleges, where they'll really, foreign investors from Saudi Arabia and other different sheikhdom, sort of rich Arab countries, will invest a lot of money, and they will completely cancel any pro-Israeli influence in that institute. So if we can counter that and say, well, you know, we'll found this organization or this body which will help people at least hear the truth. Secondly, there's a question of media. The media is completely controlled by money. And if you can change what people hear, if I could pay for an ad in Norway and say, you might not be hearing the entire truth, you know, go to this website, or, you know, put out anything, give out information to challenge people's perception of reality, make a presentation, send 10,000 Israelis who are well trained into every school in Europe, and say, you know, here is the truth about this, at least our perspective, hear our side of the story, even if you don't agree, at least hear what we have to say. Lital was saying this, we are such a small minority in the world. And all the Israeli ambassadors around the world said there's us, then there are 40 Arab countries in the same city. We're, you know, 1 to 40 at least, if not more than that.
And I think that also we must change our approach. I mean, we should stop with our apologetic approach. I mean, we're here because we have the right to be here, because we have the right to defend ourselves, and we should stop apologizing constantly. And that's the first thing that needs to change.
Okay, Lital, I'm going back for a second to the money issue. How is your work funded?
Stand With Us,
yes.
They have a lot of donors. It's a non-organization, and they have donors from all around the world who really cares for Israel. And yes.
Is there any governmental support?
At the moment, no. I mean, they're working they're working with the government sometimes, but it's an organization, so.
I want to ask you personally.
Non-profit organization.
I want to ask you personally. There was 3 years ago the Marmara issue that Mati mentioned. I think most of the people in Israel agreed that the Israeli Hasbara, the advocacy, failed at this incident. What do you think about it? What went wrong there?
I think that the main problem was that the IDF spokesman didn't let the pictures and the real facts out as fast as they can, and that was the first problem that we had. A lot of the time there is a clashing, you know, between the spokesman and the IDF, and things are not just going out. And by the time the real facts went out to the media, it was way too late.
Is it possible for you personally to try and change these things? You know, they were talking about huge systems, the army and the government. What can a small person do?
Yes, I was actually interviewing the IDF spokesman a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him that specific question, and he told me that at the moment they are building a headquarter in the sea in order to let those things you know, more fluidly to the media and as it happens, and to take pictures and to show what is really happening in the field.
I think it was more than just the pictures, though. In this case, it was a classic case of politicians getting in the way of the people who actually know the work. And to be fair, they held it as a secret almost till the last moment, and they could have been prepared for it, and they weren't. There are the instances we have 2 ministers in the government whose entire work is actually to advocate for the state of Israel. Yuli Edelstein and Avigdor Lieberman. That is their job, and they didn't even know about it till almost just till it happened. So I think a lot of it was politics in that case. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but they could have done so much more. And they had the money, they had the people, they had the time, they had the whole system set up, but they didn't feed the system the information on time.
And we also shouldn't have sent soldiers with paintball guns. I mean, it's part of our apologetic approach. I mean, what was that?
Well, I want to ask you very shortly, maybe the state of Israel has more important things to deal with. Maybe they don't have time to try and speak to the world.
I don't know if it's a matter of time. I mean, it's extremely important. You can see by the acts in the battlefields of how we are apologizing all the time. I mean, it's not a matter of time or a matter of money. It's just we should find the right way to do it. And I think that organizations like Stand With Us and organization which is non-governmental are doing a really, really good job, because people are getting the chance to speak to real people, to real Israelis, not to hear it from soldiers or from ministers, or just regular Israelis who live in Israel, who wants to live here in peace.
So, in a few words, can you tell us some kind of tips to our audience watching? How can they do better in explaining Israel to their surroundings, their neighbors?
Yes. Well, as I said in the beginning, a lot of people know about Israel but don't know Israelis. So I urge them to speak to Israelis, to speak to people who was here, to come and visit Israel, to see for their own eyes what is really going on in here, not just to hear about it in the news. That should be the first thing that they should do.
And maybe not go just to the holy places, but a bit more.
Also, yes, Ashdod, Tel Aviv, we have a gay pride in Jerusalem. I mean, amazing things in Israel. Such a small country and such an amazing things going on here. So I think that the spotlight should be on that places.
Thank you very much, Lital.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sana, and thank you, Mati.
Thank you.
And thank you, all our viewers, for being with us today, and we'll see you again next month.